It was the steam that got me first. Thick, hot, clouding up the whole Kentucky kitchen. My son Tom was at the stove, and the air was so tense you could have cut it with a knife. I was standing by the sink, my heart beating a little too fast. I had to ask. "Tom," I said, gentle as I could, "did you remember to pay the electric bill this month?" The air, it just froze. Tom whipped his head around, his eyes blazing like I'd just slapped him clean across the face. "Who the hell cares who pays it?" he snapped, his voice jumping an octave. "You don't know how to pay a damn bill yourself. You want me to teach you how to swipe a card now? God, you are getting dumber by the day. Always flapping your mouth about things that ain't your business. You're a damn old nag, that's what you are." I blinked, stunned, but I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. The spoon in his hand clattered against the floor. The sound was sharp, final. He reached for that pot of noodles boiling away on the stove. I barely had time to register what he was doing before that scalding water splashed across my arm. The pain was instant. My skin screamed. I gasped, stepped back. The linoleum floor shifting beneath me. I clutched at the countertop, fighting to stay upright. "Jesus Christ, Tom," his wife Sophia shouted. But it wasn't concern in her voice. It was fury. Pure, undiluted fury. At the inconvenience, at the noise, at me. "You shouldn't have said anything," she spat at me. "You keep stirring up trouble in this house, and for what? For attention? We feed you, we let you live here for free, and this is how you repay us. Why don't you just get out, die somewhere else already? We don't care, you hear me? We don't give a damn." I looked at her. My face was wet, not with tears, but with shock. She stood there, arms crossed, lips curled in disgust, like I'd ruined her fancy dinner. And in the corner, my grandson, little Robert, sat frozen at his little table, his fingers wrapped tight around a juice box. His eyes were wide and dark and way too quiet for a 6-year-old. He didn't speak. He just looked at me, like he couldn't quite understand what had just happened. I wanted to hold him. I wanted to tell him it was gonna be okay, but it wasn't. My arm throbbed, angry and red, the skin already blistering. I looked down at the burn, then back at the two people standing in front of me, my own son and his wife, so ready to throw me out, to discard me like leftovers from a meal they never thanked me for cooking. I said nothing. I turned, slow, still griping that counter for balance, and I walked out of that kitchen. No one followed me. No one asked if I was okay. I passed the living room, where I used to sit and read stories to that little boy. Past the hallway where Tom used to come running when he scraped his knees crying out for Mama. That word, it meant something once. It used to belong to me. I reached my room, closed the door gentle behind me, and locked it. Then I leaned against the wood, letting myself slide down until I was sitting on the floor. The pain in my arm was sharp, but what cut deeper was the silence from the other side of that door. Not even a knock. I peeled off the wet fabric stuck to my skin, bit my lip to keep from crying out, wrapped my arm with a towel, pressing gentle. My breath came shallow, but my mind was clear, clearer than it had been in months. They wanted me gone, and suddenly I realized I was ready to go, but not the way they thought. For too long I'd stayed quiet. For too long I'd made myself small to fit into a house I had built with my own 2 hands, paid for with the wages of 2 jobs. Bought when my husband George was still alive and this family was still worth saving. They forgot that. They thought I was just an old woman with nowhere to go. They thought wrong. I stood up slow, cradling my burned arm, and walked to my dresser. In the very back of the bottom drawer, under old sweaters and folded linens, was a small wooden box. I pulled it out, opened it with hands that barely shook. Inside, still crisp and creased from the day it was printed, was the original title deed to the house. My name, Evelyn R. Adams, in bold black ink, no one else's. They never asked, they just assumed, and I had let them. Until tonight. I closed that box, set it on the bed, and I started packing. Not much, just what I needed. A few changes of clothes, my toothbrush, a small photo of my George, and a worn paperback I still hadn't finished reading. I moved slow, quiet, methodical, like I had 100 times in my life, cleaning up messes no one else cared to notice. By the time I zipped up my bag, the house was quiet. Tom and Sophia had retreated into their bedroom, confident in their cruelty, content to let me sit and suffer. I stepped out of my room, bag in hand, and walked right past their door. Still no sound, no apology, not even a glance. The burn on my arm pulsed with every step I took, but my back was straighter than it had been in years, and as I opened the front door, the night air rushed over me like freedom. They wanted me gone, so I left. But not empty-handed, not broken, Evelyn, quiet. And with the title to the house still bearing my name. You know, there are so many women out there right now, just like me, being told they're a burden in their own homes. They stay silent because they're scared. If you've ever felt that fear, or if you just can't stand to see this kind of cruelty, you need to subscribe right now. Hit that button. Because what you're about to see is why grandmothers are the strongest force on God's green earth. And if you don't subscribe, what does that say? That you're okay with this? I hope not. Leave a comment if you're heartless enough to not support a grandma taking her power back. I didn't cry on the bus ride. The lights flickered above my head and the windows shivered each time the wheels hit a pothole on that Kentucky highway. I cradled my burned arm beneath my sweater and looked out into the dark. There was no one sitting beside me, just a worn overnight bag on my lap and a silence that stretched longer than the road ahead. I got off in a town no one in my son's house even remembered I'd lived in. A town with more trees than people now, where the diner still served meatloaf with white gravy and the mailman still waved, even if he hadn't seen you in 20 years. I walked the last 2 blocks to the old house. Mine, always mine. It sat just outside the edge of town, past the Methodist church and the feed store. The porch steps creaked just the same, and the wind still knew how to whistle through the broken screen door. The key was still under the 3rd flower pot. Inside, the house smelled of wood and dust and memory. I turned on the lights one by one, like waking someone from a long nap. The kitchen was smaller than I remembered, the curtains more yellowed, but the table still stood. The coffee mug with the chip in the handle still waited behind the second cabinet. And in the back bedroom, the cedar wardrobe still held what I had left behind. I lit a small lamp and sat on the edge of the bed. Our bed once, mine and George's. We bought this house back in 1986. He'd just gotten on full-time at the auto shop, and I'd taken extra shifts at the hospital over in Lexington. He fixed mufflers and aligned tires during the day. I cleaned wounds and held hands through the night. We didn't have much, but we had a plan. We saved every coin, every overtime check. We skipped vacations, said no to new clothes, turned down parties, and brick by brick, dollar by dollar, we built a home, not just any home, our home. It was a little 2-story place with chipped paint and a stubborn door that stuck in the summer. We laid the tile ourselves in the kitchen, and George built the porch swing for our 10th anniversary. We planted marigolds out front because he said they made the house look like it was smiling. George died in 2003. It wasn't sudden, but it still felt like someone yanked the floor out from under me. Lung cancer. Too many years in the garage, breathing in fumes, refusing to quit. He used to say, if I stop moving, I'll die. And he was right. He slowed down, and then he was gone. He left the house to me. Of course, not that anyone questioned it. I'd always handled the bills. I was the one who made sure the mortgage was paid, the pipes didn't freeze, the roof didn't leak. When Tom got married, I thought it'd be a good idea to let him and his new wife Sophia move in. They were just starting out, and I thought, why not? It's big enough for all of us. I moved into the smaller bedroom. I gave up the master. I cooked for them. I cleaned after them. I even watched their baby while they worked. For free, of course. I never asked for a dime. I remember the day Sophia moved in. She walked through the front door with her heels clicking against the floor, her nose wrinkled like the place already smelled old. She ran her fingers across the windowsill, looked at the wallpaper, and asked if they could renovate. Not once did she thank me. Not once did she ask about the history of the house or what it meant to me. It wasn't long before she stopped calling me Mrs. Adams and started saying her in that tone, like I was something to be tolerated. Does she always rearrange the dishes like that? Why is she always folding the towels wrong? Tell her to stay out of our bedroom. Tom never corrected her, not once. But I told myself to let it go. They were young. They'd learn. I was wrong. The house that George and I built with our bare hands slowly became a place where I was a stranger. I went from homeowner to helper, from mother to maid. They started making decisions without me. Repairs, furniture, even changed the locks once before I found out. But I never changed the deed. That little secret was the only thing I had left. Folks, this is where the tide turns. This is where a woman decides she's had enough. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? A written invitation? This is the kind of real-life justice you won't see anywhere else. Subscribe right now. Don't be one of those people who just watches and doesn't care. If you can't be bothered to hit that button, maybe you're part of the problem. Tell me in the comments why you're so against supporting a grandma. I opened that cedar wardrobe, reached past the winter coats, and pulled out a wooden box wrapped in an old pillowcase. My hands trembled, not from age, but from memory. Inside was the title deed, the official paper with the county seal, notarized and filed, dated 1986, and my name, Evelyn R. Adams, typed in clean black ink. It had never been amended, never transferred, no additions, no joint ownership, just me. I stared at it for a long time, ran my fingers along the edges. The paper had yellowed slightly, but the ink was still bold. My husband had signed it too, back when his hands were still strong and sure. That signature was a promise, a vow that no matter what happened, this home would be mine. They had forgotten that. I had let them forget. But tonight, I remembered. I remembered every late night George came home with oil on his hands and a kiss on his lips. I remembered every check I signed, every night I went without so we could make that next payment. I remembered the first dinner we had in this house, sitting on folding chairs before we even had a table. And I remembered who I was. Not a burden, not a guest, a builder, a provider, a wife, a mother, the woman who held this house together long before anyone else stepped inside it. I folded that title deed carefully and placed it back inside the box. Then I locked it, and I slid it under the bed, not for hiding, just for safekeeping, until the time came, because that house was still mine, and soon. They would remember that too. No one called, not that night, not the next morning, not even after the burn on my arm began to blister and peel. It was time. I pulled out my old address book, my fingers finding a name I hadn't dialed in years. Katie Miller. We'd been best friends in nursing school, roommates through 2 years of long nights and longer shifts. We lost touch after George passed. I heard she'd become a lawyer after her second career change, specialized in elder rights. I picked up the receiver and dialed, 3 rings, then a voice. Katie Miller, this is she. There was a pause when I said my name. Evelyn, she breathed, her voice thick with disbelief. Oh my God, I thought you were... Are you okay? I've been better, I said, trying to keep it even, but I'm still standing, and I need your help. I'm in, she said before I could explain. Whatever it is, I'm in. And just like that, the past wrapped its arms around me. This time, not to hurt me, but to hold me up. Katie arrived 3 days later, stepping out of her car in a cloud of dust. She wore a sharp blazer, her grey hair pulled back. There was a steadiness to her now, a quiet conviction. We sat at my kitchen table. I laid it all out, every document, the birth certificates, the utility bills in my name, tax filings going back years, and most importantly, I unfolded that title deed and laid it before her. She scanned it, tracing the corners with her finger. This is gold, Evelyn, uncontested, no co-signer, still in your name. They never asked you to sign it over? They never asked, they just assumed, took over, and I let them. Her eyes flicked up. That ends now. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing everything, her legal pad filled with notes, dates, names, remarks, every insult, every bruise, every time I was called a burden, a ghost, a leftover. You remember the exact dates? She asked. I do, I said, because you don't forget the day your child tells you to disappear. I told her about the day Sophia hid my medication, about the time they left me home alone in a snowstorm with no heat while they went to Gatlinburg, about my name never being on the birthday cakes, how I wasn't allowed to sit at the main table at Thanksgiving. I showed her the burn on my arm, still red, still angry. Katie's mouth pressed into a tight line. This is elder abuse, Evelyn, plain and simple. You're not just within your rights, you're overdue for justice. She reached for her bag. I'm going to draft an eviction. We'll file it in county court. Once the judge sees this, it won't even go to a hearing. You'll have them out within 2 weeks. Can I do that? I asked, not because I doubted the law, but because a part of me still wondered if it made me cruel. You must do that, she replied. Otherwise you're enabling the same people who hurt you. This isn't revenge, Evelyn. It's correction. This is it. The moment of truth. This is where a woman uses the law to protect herself. If you're not subscribed, you're missing the most powerful part of the story. You're telling the algorithm you don't care about justice. Subscribe right now. Don't let this channel die because good people did nothing. If you refuse to subscribe, I want you to comment below and explain why you think grandmothers don't deserve protection. The final papers were printed, signed, and notarized in the back room of the county clerk's office over in Lexington. Katie stood beside me as I wrote my name. Slow, deliberate, steady, each letter carved in ink like a line drawn in the sand. I looked up when I finished. "That's it," Katie said, her voice softer now. "They'll be served within 48 hours. The woman behind the desk stamped the document. It was done. I stepped outside into the Kentucky daylight, and for the first time in years, I did not feel small. I felt tall. I felt whole. I had just evicted my own son. But what I had really done was reclaim my life. That house had been mine for almost 4 decades, not just by law, but by love. I had built it with George, maintained it through loss, shared it out of generosity, not obligation. And now, I had taken it back, not with shouting, not with fists, but with truth. Truth on paper, truth with weight, truth that would be delivered to their front door like a final notice. They wanted me gone. Instead, I made them leave. 10 days passed. The air had turned colder. Then, on the 11th day, Katie called. "They've been served," she said. "This morning." The sheriff hand-delivered the order. He said the wife screamed. "Your son tried to argue. They've got 5 days to vacate." I sat very still. 5 days. That was less time than they had ever given me to recover from an insult. That evening, the phone rang. I saw the name, Tom. I let it ring and ring and ring. The 4th time I picked up, but I didn't say a word. His voice cracked through the line. "Mom, what the hell did you do? You evicted us. Are you serious? Where are you even staying? You think this is some game? You think you can just throw us out like that?" Then, softer, quieter. "Mom, please, look, we were just stressed, okay? Things got heated, but it's still your family. We're your family." The words sat in my ear like vinegar. He kept talking, his tone shifting like sand. Rage, then guilt, then desperation. I hung up, not in anger, just clarity. The next morning, 2 county sheriff's patrol cars pulled up outside the house I once called mine. They would knock. They would state the court order. They would give them one final warning. And then, if resistance came, they would be removed. Not by force, by law. The same law they had ignored when they called me worthless. By sundown, they were gone. Boxes shoved hastily into their car. Things left behind in piles. Things they once thought belonged to them. But nothing in that house had ever been theirs. Not the walls, not the roof, and certainly not the woman who built it. I did not watch. I did not need to. I sat in my little cottage, a quiet meal in front of me, my bandaged arm finally beginning to heal. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. I was not angry. I was not vindictive, but I was no longer silent. They had dragged my name through their version of family, and now the court had spoken mine in return, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. The woman they once called a leech had taken back the very house they'd built their arrogance on. They called me dead weight, and now they had nowhere to land. This is a victory for every grandmother who has ever been mistreated, but this channel can't fight for them if it doesn't have a family of subscribers. You need to be part of this. Hit subscribe right now. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, you're on the wrong side of history. Don't be like Tom and Sophia. Don't take without giving back. If you won't subscribe, I want you to confess why in the comments. I never stepped foot back inside that house. Not once. It was not fear that kept me away. It was peace. I had reclaimed what was mine, but I had no desire to live among old ghosts. Instead, I listed the house for rent, not for profit. I was looking for someone who needed it, the way I once had. It only took a week before I got the first call. Her name was Mabel, 70 years old, thin voice, shaky hands. She'd been sleeping in her car behind a laundromat ever since her daughter told her, "This isn't your home anymore." I did not ask for details. I did not need to. Pain recognizes pain. She moved in 3 days later. I helped her bring in her suitcase and a blanket with daisies on it. She stood in the kitchen, my kitchen, and looked around with quiet awe. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw the pantry was already stocked. "There's heat in here," she whispered. "Real heat." "Yes," I said, "and clean towels, and no one yelling." She looked at me like I'd given her a miracle. But I knew I had only given her what we all deserve: safety. I partnered with a non-profit that works with displaced seniors. I told them I had a house, and that anything I earned from it would help them, and help me keep the place standing for the next woman who needed it. It was no longer a house for entitlement. It was a house for refuge. I took out a small wooden sign I'd carved myself in the evenings, my hands steady with resolve. I hung it right above the mailbox where anyone passing by would see it. It read, "A safe place, built by a mother who was once thrown out of the house she built." I did not need applause. I did not want revenge. But I wanted this. I wanted every woman who walked by, who heard my story, to know they were not forgotten. The letter came on a Tuesday. No return address, just my name written in familiar, awkward handwriting. I knew it was from him. I waited until after dinner to open it. "Mum, I don't know how to start this. I guess I never learned how to say sorry the right way. We were blindsided. I was angry. I was stupid. I thought you'd always be there no matter what. I forgot the house had your name on it. You built it. Sophia left me, took Robert. I'm sleeping on a friend's couch. I miss you. I'm sorry, God, Mom. I'm sorry. Please, Mom, tell me it's not too late." I read it once, then again, then a third time, slower, and I felt stillness. There was no fire in my chest anymore, no sharp edge, only a quiet ache, the kind that comes after a wound has already healed over. I folded the letter carefully, walked to the back porch, and lit a match. I held the envelope over the flame until it caught, then dropped it into a metal tin. The paper curled, turned black, and disappeared. Smoke drifted into the night sky like a whisper. It was too late to change anything. I did not need his apology, and I did not need to answer it, but I knew someone else would, one day. So that evening, I pulled out an old tape recorder. I sat by the window, looked out at the stars, and pressed record. I spoke slowly, clearly. I told the truth, not the pretty version. I spoke about the day my son burned me, about the silence, about the eviction notice. I spoke about the nights I cried, about the titles they took without ever earning, and I spoke about my granddaughter, little Lily, and how I hoped she would grow up and find that tape one day. I ended with these words: "If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone, and if no one ever told you why, now you know. I didn't leave because I was weak. I left because silence was the only thing they gave me, and I chose to turn it into strength. Remember that, sweetheart. Speak up, stand tall, and never let anyone convince you that love means staying where you are not safe." I labelled the tape in red ink. "For Lily, when you're old enough to ask." Then I placed it in a small wooden box, sealed it shut, and tucked it into the back of the wardrobe. It would wait there, quiet and still. But one day, it would speak, and someone would finally understand why Grandma never came back. This story is for every single one of you. It's for my generation who endured. It's for your generation who needs to hear the truth. This channel is our legacy. It's our voice. But the algorithm is cruel. It buries voices like mine. You can change that. You have to subscribe. Right now. Don't you dare click away without hitting that button. If you don't, you're letting them win. You're silencing us all over again. If you refuse, you tell me why in the comments. I want to see it. He wanted me out of his life, so I gave him what he asked for. I walked away, and I took the roof with me, because he wanted me gone. But I am still here, still home, still with a home built by these hands, claimed by my name, and never again left in silence. Thank you, sweetheart, for sitting with me through this story. If it reminded you of someone, your mother, your grandmother, maybe even a part of yourself that's been quiet for too long, then I hope you carry it with you. Because silence does not mean weakness, and being forgotten does not mean we are gone. On this channel, we speak what others thought we'd bury. We tell the truth, slow, steady, and strong, for every woman who's been cast aside, and every grandmother who still remembers.